Hey guys, Andrew Henderson, Nomad Capitalist in Ubud, Bali. Just kind of hanging out with some of our clients this week, and wanted to do a little video as a follow-up to the super secret passport that Peter Thiel got down in New Zealand, and explain how you can get a passport in New Zealand. Now, as we talked about in the other video, Peter Thiel, it appears, got a passport through what's called the granting procedure in New Zealand, where a body that approves people who make extraordinary contributions to the country granted him a passport and waived the naturalization requirements. Therefore, he did not have to follow the procedures that everyone else would have to become a New Zealand citizen. But over the years, I've been asked a few times by folks who tell me, Andrew, we know you like Georgia and Montenegro and Malaysia, and you know, there's some countries you like in the EU. We want to go better than all that. We don't want to waste time with small fries. We want to go right to the big English-speaking countries. And the biggest one I'm asked about is New Zealand. My parents actually did a lot of research into New Zealand back in the mid-90s, kind of visionaries back then. So how do you become a New Zealand citizen? Well, the procedure is pretty similar in New Zealand as it is in most of the English-speaking countries, the 6 big English-speaking countries. And what all those countries require in pretty much every case is that, 1, you make some kind of investment or put up some kind of money to become a resident first. And then that 2, you spend most of your time there for a number of years, typically 4 to 5 years. So obviously, you know, this is not about people who want to go and get a job. If you have a job that's in demand, you're an accountant, you're a phlebotomist, whatever, you can go and get a job, and then you don't have to put up the money to get in. These countries oftentimes need people to come and do jobs. But if you're just an investor, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're me, if you're you, if you're Peter Thiel, they typically want you to put up some money. In New Zealand's case, that's 1.5 million New Zealand dollars. And that goes up to a certain age, typically in the 50s. If you're over that, then you got to start to pay more because they don't want older people immigrating there. It goes up to as high as 10 million New Zealand dollars. So if you're relatively young, you're a young couple, young family, 1.5 million New Zealand dollars, million and change US dollars right now, a little less even sometimes, and you're in, you become a resident. You know, that's like the second residency process, and now you can go and live in New Zealand. And now you have to go and live in New Zealand if you want to, A, maintain that residence on any kind of long-term basis, B, become a citizen. So in New Zealand, the process to become a citizen takes 5 years. Pretty typical for this kind of developed country that it takes 5 years. Unlike some of the other countries that I recommend to folks, you have to live in New Zealand 8 months a year for each of those 5 years, so 240 days a year. That means you can spend 4 months traveling around the world, and obviously New Zealand is a little bit harder to travel around the world because it's so far away, but you get 4 months. So if you are the Nomad Capitalist and you're in 30 countries a year, not really going to work for you. But if you're looking to go and set up shop somewhere, then that could work. New Zealand is pretty similar to Canada, it's pretty similar to the UK, Ireland, which is a bit more generous, the US. But, you know, Australia and New Zealand in particular are 2 of the hardest countries to get into, in my opinion. Obviously, New Zealand has an excellent passport. It's cool because it's in the southern hemisphere, it's totally detached, it's totally independent, it's a safe haven. People store their gold down at the tip of New Zealand. And it's not part of any of these alliances like the EU that people are worried about. But if you want a New Zealand passport and you're not a billionaire who can go and bring in investors and contribute exceptional services to the country, be prepared to go to New Zealand and live there. And the big one is pay taxes there. Not exactly a low-tax country. Now, if you're coming from the United States and you're paying high taxes in the United States, you're kind of like jumping from one frying pan into the other. Not something I typically recommend to people when you can get a second passport by greatly reducing your tax. That's often possible. That's what we do at Nomad Capitalist, is help people do both of those at once. But if you're insistent on a New Zealand or other developed English-speaking countries' passport, that's what it's going to involve. That's what it involves in New Zealand. If you don't have a job offer and you want to go and be an entrepreneur, it's $1 million, and it's a commitment to spend the majority and vast majority of your time there for the next 5 years.